So I'm going to pose this question to you, and it's a pretty heavy question.
So this cease and desist, that's what I feel about that. Let's keep fighting the good fight and bringing more people on our side.
In Davis, California, one mother found herself at the center of a debate that has spread far beyond her hometown. Her name is Beth Bourne. A longtime resident, parent, and community activist, Beth has become one of the most recognizable voices in California's growing parents' rights movement. For years, she has attended school board meetings, organized parents, spoken at rallies, and challenged policies she believes limit transparency between schools and families. She has been involved in debates surrounding parental notification, gender identity policies in schools, student privacy, and the role parents should play in decisions affecting their children. Supporters see her as a determined advocate, willing to ask difficult questions and stand up for parental involvement in education. Critics see her as a polarizing figure whose activism has fueled some of the most contentious debates happening in California today. But whether you agree with her or not, Beth Bourne has become impossible to ignore. Her advocacy has drawn national attention. Her speeches have gone viral. Her protests have made headlines, and her willingness to challenge institutions has made her both a symbol and a lightning rod in the fight over the future of public education. Tonight, we move beyond the headlines, beyond the social media clips, beyond the controversy, to hear directly from the woman at the center of it all. Who is Beth Bourne? What drives her? And why has her message resonated with so many parents across California? This is Around Town with Matt Ward and Sonja Shaw, and this conversation starts now.
All right, so jump right into it here. So today we have on Beth Bourne. And so as far as I would say, I'm not going to try to give you too much of an introduction. What I would say is your videos basically speak for themselves, and what you do speaks for yourself. If I could describe you in one word, I would use the word bold. That's the word I would use. And so I'd advise people to go watch your street videos, go watch your interviews. And some of the main things I know that you're involved in, I know that you've gone undercover to expose Kaiser gender ideology in terms of the money and what you call the medical scandal in terms of doing transgender surgeries on children. And even you got approved for, I think you call that phyloplasty. You've had death threats hurled at you. You've been verbally assaulted and physically assaulted. I understand some of your stuff's been reposted by Elon Musk. And one of the things I like about your style is you basically ask very simple questions. You're not out there, with these intellectual debates. It's questions like, hey, how did you know your kid was trans? Or, what is a trans kid? And basically people start going off the hinges because they just can't handle your simplicity, I suppose. And so that's kind of the introduction I would give to you. And I know you're going to speak a lot about that. And then Sonja Shaw, obviously no introduction needed, superintendent of public instruction candidate right now, and Chino Valley School Board president, and big fighter for parental rights and protecting female sports, which is something that Beth is very much involved in. And so as far as the purpose of the conversation, I always say that knowledge is power. Learn from other people's experiences, learn from what they're doing. And so that's why I wanted to have you on, is that you have a unique perspective and you're doing very unique things that are very bold things. And I want people to be able, even maybe people, you're a very polarizing figure, obviously, and people that are over here to hear what you have to say that maybe don't agree with you or don't like you, but at least you know what they can learn from that. And knowledge is power. So with that being said, I want to start by asking you the question, in regards to your political activism, where did it start for you? Why are you so involved? You obviously are super passionate about this, on a level that maybe nobody else is. So where did it start for you and why?
So my first few years, and thank you for that introduction. Yeah, I think people, they often say, wow, you're so courageous, or you're so bold, or you're just out there. It's been 5 years I've been doing this. And the first few years I was very afraid. I was afraid of losing my friends. I was afraid of what my daughter would think about me. I was afraid of, how this would have impact my job, my relationships with my neighbors. So I was very careful this first 2 years to just speak out like in letters or emails from anonymous accounts. And then just over time, I started to realize that this wasn't going to end that way. It wasn't going to end with us being polite or, you know, being afraid of being canceled. And so I think my first big action was when we had a book author come to Davis to speak on, it was called the transgender child,
Mhm.
and over 12 years old was invited to this talk, and I just thought this is wrong. And so I had friends from around California and people I hadn't met. They joined me in front of my daughter's high school, and we did a protest. It was a cold, rainy January day, and that was the first time I really did some activism out in the public. But I still was wearing a mask and sunglasses, afraid to be noticed or be recognized. And I think that's what they've kind of created is a space where you can't even ask questions, because they'll come after you, they'll come after your family, they'll come after your job, your livelihood. And I don't think there's been anything else like this in my lifetime.
Mhm.
Okay. And in terms of the question of coming after you, can you please describe some of the ways that people have come after you or organizations have come after you or your job in terms of physical attacks, verbal attacks, losing your job, things of that nature? How has this affected your life?
So I think that the big one that's in the news the last couple of weeks is how the Southern Poverty Law Center, they have this hate watch list. And if you're somebody who speaks out, and Sonja Shaw's the first person I think I saw really speaking out here in California. So talk about courage is contagious. I picked it up from Sonja. So um, the Southern Poverty Law Center, they put anyone who has a conservative view who's effective. Like if you get on the hate watch list, it's because you're doing good work, and they know that your people are listening to you.
Hmm.
So I was put on that list in 2023. It was mostly maybe because I spoke out about drag queens in Hawaii while I was on vacation. But our chancellor, UC, University of California, Davis, they issued a statement condemning my behavior as an employee on my vacation. And so I think that's the only time it's ever been done where somebody who worked for the university was basically reprimanded in front of the entire community about my speech, which was, why are there drag queens in front of kids? um, so then, there was also these series of bomb threats, and now with the SPLC coming out as funding far right extremist groups, I would not be surprised if the SPLC was behind these bomb threats. But there are 6 bomb threats in the city of Davis, and even our police chief said I was responsible for them, which of course wasn't true. The FBI investigated; there was no ties to me. But yeah, so that's an example. So, my employer came after me. I ended up being put on investigatory leave for 8 months. It was paid. I came back to work. They found zero evidence of workplace misconduct because I was very careful, keep my speech in my private life. But they did say that I was sexually harassing other employees because I was misgendering them, which, I disagree with. It's a free speech issue. But I came back to work for 4 months, and then I was laid off. Just surprisingly, I was the only person I think in our whole section that was laid off after some budget cuts, even though I had 11 years seniority and a perfect record. So that's an example. But more than that, I would say it's the threats of violence. And I think Sonia also experiences this. I get people saying they're outside my door, they take videos of where my house is. They send me these emails or direct messages that are very threatening physically. And they use like, profanity. They slashed my tires in front of my house in downtown. They, graffitied this front walkway. I've had at least a dozen signs stolen. I was punched in the back of the head at at the university at a Turning Point USA event. So I've been going to the court hearings. The person who punched me was charged with a felony charge because it was orchestrated with a bunch of mass protesters. We call it Antifa or Trans-Tifa. So yeah, they'll just come after you every way possible, and and when people are afraid to speak out, I really can understand why.
Yeah.
So that leads into my question of with all that's going on and all the attack that's been put against you, what's your why? Like, what's your passion for why you're actually doing this and still doing it and not giving up? Why are you doing it?
So it's very personal to me. And I say I'm one of the people that was very lucky because my daughter was able to grow out of, she got caught in a trans identity. And I kind of refer to it as the gender web. People oftentimes will use the word, these children are being programmed or groomed to believe in this idea that, if you're very mathematical and you like robots, you must be a boy. And if you're into makeup and nail polish, you must be a girl. Really these regressive sexist ideas. But so I saw what happened to my daughter and how quickly they wanted to medicalize her body, and how the schools really promoted the social transition at school with having kids change their names and pronouns, and they were allowed to use the opposite locker room when they went on school field trips. The boys who were trans identified were allowed to be in the hotel room with the girls at Davis High School. Um, we had three boys competing in girls' sports at Davis High School. Anyways, it was just so obvious as the social contagion of like, bringing in this idea to children that you could be born in the wrong body. And the girls who, get celebrated for coming out as trans boys or non-binary, they influence their friend group. So half of my daughter's theater group was transgender. A third of her choir was transgender. So, and then I was seeing these girls being medicalized. So I was seeing girls, having top surgery in junior high school, which is a double mastectomy, and you can't ever, yeah, you'll never get your healthy body back. So that's why I speak out so much is I'm lucky to have a daughter who's healthy and whole. She's 20 now, but I am still watching what's happening in Davis and across California, and knowing that no child is safe as long as we're teaching this in the schools, and as long as this public schools are allowed to socially transition kids without their parents, and as long as we still have some of our medical establishments, they're still doing these surgeries and giving these drugs to kids. So some of them have stopped. Stanford has stopped. LA Children's Hospital has stopped. Kaiser doesn't do surgeries anymore as of last July, but there's still plenty of private providers that'll do this stuff.
But
So,
I think one of the reasons why they've stopped is because of people like you. Because I mean, we've seen it. We see it in policy, we see it in laws.
yeah,
Unfortunately, the majority of California doesn't pay attention to those things until it hits them right in the face, like it did with your daughter.
right.
So I just have to point out because you're bringing these things and awareness, people can no longer say it's not happening. And now they're going on defense. And really, what they're defending is the mutilation of children and the lying and the keeping the parents out of it. So I have to give you credit, Beth. I mean, every day I'm praying for you. And every time I see a video of you, I'm like, Lord, just put extra angels around her. But to be honest with you, you're bringing a lot of awareness that people cannot deny anymore. So I just want to thank you for being bold and courageous. And from mother to mother, just you saw a problem. And while you saved your own child, you still see a bunch of other children that are in harm's way and their parents have no clue. So thanks for
Right.
putting yourself out there. I just continuously ask the Lord for protection over you. And thank you for being bold in protecting these kids because, again, the majority of California cannot deny that this is happening. So thank you.
Right.
So along the lines of the work that you're done, a friend messaged me and said, I heard her talking about neurodivergent kids having difficulties fitting in with peers. Curious of any data with this specifically, with my own encounters with youth. I think she's onto something. I've had 5 students, blah, blah, blah. Whatever happened to just being a tomboy? So, what are your thoughts on neurodivergent kids? Do you see a trend with kids with, autism or different disorders like being transed, so to speak?
Yeah, so, I think this goes back to 2015 or 2016. There was a reunion of classmates from MIT, and one of the parents noticed that so many of them in their group had trans-identified kids. It was like he's at a reunion, it's 2015, and all of a sudden there's all these parents who have kids that are, that think they're transgender. And so I've always been kind of following that. Like, why do we have so many and also it's not just that, but also you get these clusters of autistic kids within these communities, like Davis would be one, or Cambridge, Massachusetts, or Ann Arbor, Michigan, or Madison, Wisconsin, right? I'm naming, university towns where you have a high concentration of educated people. And when you have two very, very smart people marry each other, then you end up having oftentimes highly gifted intellectual kids. So my daughter, she was a National Merit Scholar, perfect math SAT. Um, and I talk to other parents who have the same situation where they have a child who is a National Merit Scholar and trans-identified. And then you see within the high school, the other kids that are falling into these identities, they're oftentimes in the gifted the AP physics class or in the robotics club, AP calculus. So, maybe some of these students have been diagnosed as autistic, which I knew as far as like Davis High School. I think the 18 kids that were National Merit Scholars, I knew some of the mothers, and they did have their kids already diagnosed as autistic. So, there's studies, right? You can see if it's maybe 75%. I'm not positive of the numbers, but if you have trans-identified kids, many of them will be neurodivergent, right? They're uncomfortable with social settings. They're uncomfortable maybe with sensory things like clothing. And so, if you have a girl who doesn't fit in with the girls because she can't follow the social cues of like what's cool on Instagram, and then she also doesn't like wearing, a frilly camisole or lacy clothing, all these things, just being autistic may make her think that she's a trans boy because she likes wearing comfortable, boy clothing, and she doesn't like having makeup on her face. So, yeah, I don't have the studies in front of me, but I do follow that very closely because, anecdotally, I see it across Davis, and I hear about it from other communities like Davis, where there's just a super high percentage of students, they're not in the FFA group or the on the football team. They're in AP calculus. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Part of what you described there actually sounds a lot like Layla Jane, because one of the things she said was she had undiagnosed autism and other pre-existing conditions. And
Right.
the medical professionals told her, oh, well, you're really a boy and do
Yeah.
surgeries. And
Yeah, she
obviously,
said she was super gifted, and the teachers told her that she was reading, several years ahead of her peers as a fifth grader.
Yeah.
So, she was prescribed her double mastectomy when she was only 12. She had the surgery at 13. So if you think about having a super intelligent child, at a school where she really did stand out as being one of the brightest, like that's going to make you feel different.
Hmm.
all right. So one of the things I always do is a devil's advocate question. So I'm gonna hit you with this question here. So a lot of people don't see your activism as protecting girls at all. They see it as targeting transgender kids. They argue that by pushing to exclude them from sports and opposing how gender identity is handled in schools, you're singling out a small vulnerable group and contributing to real harm. Higher rates of bullying, isolation, and mental health struggles. So some go further and say this isn't just policy disagreement, it's discrimination dressed up as fairness. So why shouldn't people view your work as fundamentally intolerant or even outright transphobic? And what responsibility do you take, if any, for the impact your positions have on those kids?
So I think I would, I think it's pretty clear if you watch someone like Billboard Chris with a sign that says, children can't consent to puberty blockers, that he's not doing it because he wants to hurt the trans-identified kid, right? He's doing it because he's trying to point out that, that children, they can't consent to taking these chemicals and sterilizing themselves. It's just not possible. Um, and their parents can't set to have that done to their body.
Yeah.
Same with the surgery. So I would say that um, my whole reason for doing this is actually to protect these trans identified kids and vulnerable adults because they're the sweetest, like quirkiest, sympathetic, sensitive, creative type kids. They're wonderful. They're absolutely wonderful. And I know that in my heart I'm doing it because I just want them to get to adulthood and be able to decide, do I want to be a parent? They should be able to have their own children, right? We should not be putting eggs and sperm of children into fertility banks because they want to appear as the opposite sex. And I think I mean it's obvious this is an unfolding medical scandal. So but I do want to mention the reason why I bring up sports so much is not actually because I think it's that big of an issue. I mean, it is a huge injustice to these girls. It's gaslighting these girls. Um, but the fact that, there's male bodies in the locker rooms of all these girls, right? This is not on the competition field, but in their locker rooms and bathrooms here at our high schools. And there's men in women's prisons, right? Incarcerated men who self-ID as women, assaulting, raping women. Um, there's lots of really big issues around gender, but I speak out so much on the sports issue because it's so visible and it impacts every parent, right? Or every person. Everyone has either a daughter, a granddaughter, a niece, or they competed in sports themselves, or maybe they coach, but everyone can understand it. And it's going to impact their family, right? That they know at some point someone's going to be, not get the podium or not get to be on the varsity team or get hurt in a volleyball game or a lacrosse game because we're allowing this crazy idea that you can use your gender identity to play sports. So that, I'm not at all trying to single out, the boys right now in CIF track and field. It's just a very visual way for people to say, oh, wait, this is obviously a great injustice. What else is behind this? Like, what will happen to this young man, who's competing in triple jump and long jump as he gets older? Like, what will he have to do to keep up this idea that he's not a boy? And then maybe they'll research, like, what are the gender, what are the surgeries? Who's making money off of them? What does it mean for him having children or his lifespan?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I just have to put some input in here, and I'm
Yeah.
grateful that you do it because history will remember those that turned their cheek, and then they'll remember those that brought awareness and fought against it. And you're definitely not a coward. You're in there, you're putting yourself in there. And I can tell you, I mean, we talk to the girls, you talk to the girls. They are extremely grateful for those that are standing up for them. They should have never had to stand up for themselves. And I know you're like me. If we hear another adult say it would stop when the girls stop, and it's like, wait, what? That's
Yeah.
not even true because we just wait for the next boy. I mean, and it's growing with the ideology growing into the curriculum and pushed in by all these activists in the classrooms, right? Not the good teachers, the activists.
Right.
And so we see an increase of numbers. I mean, look in state championships themselves. We have three males
Hmm.
competing in our girls
Hmm.
section. And you talk about go back to their high schools, like you said, how many girls are exposed to these males in their restrooms and bathrooms
Hmm.
that we saw, brave young ladies that you have, said, no, I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking for the other girls that are being exposed to these boys in the restrooms. Girls should have never had to have
Right.
that point in time where they say, I have to change in my cars or I can't do this. And I mean, you hear it, I hear it behind the scenes, the devastating stories, and even them saying, is this our new normal? Like, how did we become a society that just allows this to grow on adults' watch? So I just want to thank you for being on the right side of history. And also, I do believe that you're helping those boys, because every adult that has been in their lives that lied to them is honestly, they should be in trouble for what they've done. And I pray all the time that the one seed of truth gets planted, and then prayfully they become a story to stop others from harming people in the way that they're harming others, right?
Right.
Sorry,
So,
Matt.
Yes.
Didn't mean
oh,
to
no
interrupt.
problem.
No,
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 that
that's
actually perfectly segues right into the question I wanted to ask because at one of the last CIF meetings, maybe it was like 3 weeks ago or so, you were speaking there and you turned around and you said, groomer, groomer, groomer. Steve Sell, you are a groomer. Predators. AB Hernandez is a victim. You're lying to that boy. And so like that like really stuck with me. I'm like, whoa, whoa. AB Hernandez is a victim. Like I never thought about that but as I thought about it, and I'm like, I agree with you. I think you're right because I think he was groomed into that position. And so, can you kind of explain what do you mean by saying AB Hernandez is a victim?
right. And I just shared a video again 2 days ago, I think, where I actually spoke to his mom down at the CIF meeting in April in Long Beach. And I said to his mom, your son is really athletic. And I'm sorry that they socially transitioned him at school. And she said, no, you're twisting my words. That's not what I said. And so in the video, I inserted her actually saying this in another interview. I think it was with ABC down in Southern California, could have been NBC. But anyway, she says, on this interview that she was shocked when she found out from her son's junior high school that they had socially transitioned him at school. I mean,
Mm,
she says that in the interview. And they told her the reason they did it secretly was because some parents wouldn't take it well. And she said, well, now I understand why, because I'm one of those parents who didn't understand this. I would not have taken it well. Like I would have told my son, and she mentions that she comes from a, Catholic Hispanic family or Latino family where machismo is very much celebrated, right? So she has, the community in Hoopa Valley, I think it's, predominantly Latino, at least her community. And so there probably is some kind of I don't say homophobia, but this idea that boys should grow up to be really macho men, and here her son is not extremely macho, and so the teachers are saying, well, you just need to accept that he's actually a trans girl. And she said she says this in the interview, and it's in the my video, that I knew it was going to be very hard and dangerous for him. But I learned, basically she's saying that she was as well indoctrinated in this idea that it's more important that she accept his gender identity and that she puts aside her grief or her fears for her son and instead, celebrate his trans identity. And so it's just a 2-minute clip, but I think it basically shows that she now has to stay with this idea that her son is now, a trans girl. And so she's got all these uh, like trans advocacy groups. I'm trying to think of some of the
The
names.
Rainbow Coalition.
Yeah, exactly. I think Pride on the Pier. Anyways, there's these groups. They're in every blue community in California, but they're really rooting her and letting her know what she needs to do to push her son down this track. And so when I call people like the CIF administrators and coaches and athletic directors that are involved with CIF, they're grooming these children, and you can look at their gender inclusivity toolkit, and it says how do you groom a child to become
yeah.
a a celebrated trans athlete. You find a girl on the team who's willing to be his like supporter, a cheerleader, and make sure that she lets the other girls know this is how you interact with him, and that girl needs to make sure that he feels comfortable, on their at their practices or, in their locker room. And then, yeah, it's just all of the language. And then it talks about, what terms you should use when you talk to the athlete, um, how you can let them, and it says this right in the toolkit, you let that child lead the way they want to go. So if you have someone like Avery Hernandez, he plays girls volleyball in the fall and he does track and field as a girl in the spring, but it says a trans-identified kid could do girls, fall volleyball and then do boys golf. That child can also pick if they want to use, depending on that day, which locker room. And so, you could be a non-binary child and use both locker rooms in the
Wow.
same day.
Yeah.
Um, so it really, all of it says is that the child gets to decide and that they get to decide who should know, right? So it could just be the coach that knows that it's actually a male in girls' spaces or sports. It says don't let the parents know, like, right? It's the child should have privacy. Don't let the teachers know. Don't even let the other coaches know. So it's really made it a very dangerous place for kids, right? Because you're
Oh,
telling children that they can keep secrets from their own parents with other adults. It's, you can go down this human trafficking, sex trafficking path and see this is how you get kids set up for real harm because, you're saying, hey, if an adult gives you a lot of attention and they, believe in you and anything you say and they let you do whatever you want, then they're the good person in your life. And of course, that's not true.
No, and
wow.
they actually help define what a groomer actually is. I'm with you. I mean, I've read out the the definition of groomer in our board meetings, and
Right.
you'd be grossed out by the way that some of these activists, because we have great teachers and then we have activists, their response, and it's like, why is that making you so uncomfortable? Oh, that's right, because you fit the definition of what a groomer
Yes.
is. And then they get mad and they say, oh, they call us teachers groomers. You're not a teacher to me. You're an activist in a classroom, keeping secrets, lying to kids, pushing them into a different direction than what, they were created for. I'm sorry, I'm glad you pointed out. I mean, you and I have been in these meetings where, and Matt too. I mean, we're like, raise your hand if you want to be on the right side of history. And they're all
Mhm.
cowards and groomers, literally. Like they're fitting the definition. How again can somebody just sit back and watch this craziness, this insanity, this diabolical agenda being pushed, and then ignore the girls? Remember that one meeting? The girls went, like, there was like, what, six of them told their personal
Mhm.
stories, tears in their eyes, and not one adult would look at them in the room.
Yeah.
No,
How do you call yourself an adult? I'm
right.
just really extremely, I don't know. I'm so glad there's people like you willing to link arms with all of us and get more people activated to fight this because I don't have patience for it anymore, honestly.
All right. Well, in the essence of time, I know Sonia has another meeting she's got to get on pretty soon here, so I'm gonna do a little conclusion here. In starting off, I didn't say like how I met you, so I want to say a little story. So like with Sonia, I know she's very many times I've heard her say like link arms and bring people together, and so with that being said, like I actually met so I went to the Elk Grove School Board meeting. It was September 23rd, 2025. And there was a school board member there, Heidi Moore, that was presenting a resolution, the Protect Girls Sports resolution that night. And I'd never met Heidi. In fact, I'd never been to a school board meeting outside of the ones in Galt. In fact, I'd never really been involved in any political activism outside of Galt, really. And so I showed up that night. I wasn't planning on speaking. I just wore my shirt that said Save Girls Sports. And I stood in the back of the room against the wall. I didn't know anybody there. And then some lady walked up to me as I was standing against the back of the wall, and she walks up to me and she's like, "Hey, are you with us?" And I said, "Well, I don't think boys should be in girls' sports." And she's like, "Yeah, you're with us. Come over here, stand with us, and hold a sign," which was this sign right here. And well, that lady was you, Beth. You
Yeah.
walked up to me and brought me over and said, "Hey, come on over here and stand with us."
I love
And
it.
I didn't know who you were. I didn't know anybody in that room, but you told me come on over and join us. And so that's how I connected with you. And then if you want to take a step back, bigger picture, and think like, well, why were we there? We were there because Heidi Moore was presenting a resolution. What was the resolution? Save girls sports resolution. Okay, where did that come from? It came from Sonja
Mhm.
Shaw. She's the one that authored it. She authored it, I don't
Mhm.
know what, maybe 2, 3 years ago. I don't know exactly, but her board adopted it. And then that resolution has now been adopted by, I think, like 15 or 16 other school boards, something like that throughout the
17.
17. Okay.
Yeah.
Throughout the
The
state.
biggest one in the state, right? Kern
Yeah, Kern
County?
County
Kern
High
County. Yeah, I
School.
heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's great.
incredible.
And so I thought like that was to me that was literally what Sonia's saying about linking arms and bringing people together is her message, her resolution, what her work, like you said, Beth, brought you on board. You
Mhm.
show up to these events. I was there. You came connected with me. And now we're connected, linked arms. Now I call you a friend. You connected me with Layla Jane, who I spoke with at another school board meeting we went to later on. And I've seen you now at multiple things, and I just see you on a regular basis around. And so to me, like your message, Sonia, of bringing people together and linking arms, that's not just a phrase. That is actually a reality. In fact, I think back to the CSBA conference where you spoke at the CSBA conference, Superintendent of Public Instruction debate, and during that debate, you were the only person that got booed, and you were the only person that got applauded. And at the end of that debate, you stood off to the left of the stage, and there was a line of people waiting to come up and speak to you. And all the other candidates were hanging out in front of the stage. There were no lines for any of them. There was a line for you. In fact, I wanted to get a picture with you, but I'm like, man, the line's so long. Maybe I'll catch it later. And so, like, to me, that showed something. Like, you are resonating with people. People are very much in love with what you're saying and what you're doing. And in fact, my mom was just asking me the other night, and I was had her over for dinner, and she's like, Sony Shaw, like, what's the chance that she's gonna win? What are the percentages, what are the odds? And I was like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know the percentages. I don't know the odds, but I can say this: of all the candidates that are out there, she's the only one that's actually galvanizing people, that is exciting them, that they're excited to wear her shirt, post her sign, make videos about her, talk about her, support her campaign, however they can. And so, what you're doing is it really bringing people together. It's getting people and Beth's work as well, making these videos that now people can't deny what's actually going on. Now it's not just words on a Facebook post; it's a literal video of a girl getting beat or sharing the podium or whatever. And so I thank both of you for your work, and it really is making an impact in the culture and in I think what policy changes we've seen and will continue to see. So with that being said, any last words or how can people connect with you or whatever you want to say?
First, before Beth, if I can give some kind of award, but just know it's from my heart, you and Aaron Friday are literally my heroes. You guys are mothers that it happened directly to you. And I look back at all the people the last 6 years that I've been in this fight, and I see people come, go. I see tears. I see people have to take breaks because, it's really weighing on them. But I have never seen you two take a break. And trust me, I'm right there with you. When one of us falls, we're picking each other up. That's for darn sure. But there's not very many people that just stay constant in the fight. So between you and Aaron, man, you two are my hero moms. Me and Matt have this joke about crying, and I could already feel the tears behind my freaking eyeballs. But honestly, Beth, I love you with all my heart. You are an amazing person. And just keep fighting the good fight. But please promise me you're putting that armor on every time you go in there because these people don't know. And I think you know that. And that's why you're so kind, even though they're so mean. And I've seen you have so much grace. And I think that resonates when they watch the video, is that they just see you just asking questions and then them come viciously after you. Trust me, the protector in me wants to stand in between you and them. So it's probably a good thing sometimes we live so far away from each other because we would get into some good trouble. But I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you're doing. You could have just retreated and you saved your daughter and you could have just moved on and kept going on with life. But the fact that you show up, you're there, you encourage others, you pull them in when one of us can't be there, like Ward. I mean, I look at Matthew is like a big fighter, on the right side of history, and it was only because people pull him in, and that's you. So I just want to tell you, man, you have an award in my heart always. You have made a difference, and I pray that you're in the history books of them saying that you were the one that helped save these kids from this crazy agenda. So thank you. I love you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll never forget you standing up to our superintendent, Tony Thurman, at that meeting and the way you did that. So that to me, that's like bravery times 1,000 right there in that setting. So yeah, and it made national news. So that's how we have to do it, you
Yep,
know?
absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, any final words, Beth, or how can people get in contact with you?
Oh, and I want to thank the dads, like Matt, like
Yes,
you like, I mean, honestly, I know you guys are busy, providing for your
providing.
families and worried about, your livelihood. So for any dad who's speaking out, like, thank you so much. Um, well, yeah, I just started on Instagram, and it turns out that Instagram is really a great way for me to connect with parents and coaches around California about these boys and girls sports. So I'm on there. I think it's like Beth Bourne in Davis, California, maybe. And then I'm also a lot on Facebook, and I put everything to public, and also on X. So I love connecting with people.
Okay.
Yes. And thank you, Ward. She's right.
Aw.
Honestly,
Yeah.
the dads, you're an answer to our prayers for sure. Like she said, it's hard because they come after, usually the living that's in the house, the one
Right.
providing, as they did with Beth's job. But yeah, we just thank you for being there. And Matthew, I gotta say, like, I just can send you a message or a phone call and you just show up. You're just
Yeah.
there. So thanks for being willing because it does help inspire other dads to get involved.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like you said, courage is contagious. Bravery begets bravery. And when people see another
hmm
dad, like, hey, I can do what Matt's doing. He's just a regular
hmm
guy in my community. Well, I feel
Yep.
the same way. I should do the same thing. And I
hmm
see it and I feel it. And so, thank you.
Yep.
All right. So, with that being said, we'll wrap it up. I'm sure Beth has a Davis school board meeting she needs to go and dress at probably
Tonight.
tonight. And so, I know you got to jump on a call right now. So, I'm sure we'll connect real soon.
Yep. I got a school board
Great.
meeting too, so let's wish each other luck.
All right. Good luck with
But keep
that.
fighting the good fight and making those videos, Beth. We're all waiting,
Okay.
but yeah, you're amazing.
There are plans to stop. Thank you. Thanks,
All right.
Matt. Thanks.
See you guys real soon. Take care. All right.
Bye.
Bye.